So, welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg, and we've got another really special guest today. This guest is super special, and the reason why he's super special to me is this is actually my chiropractor. So, this is the guy that I go to see. He's local to me. He lives in my town, but he actually works in Ashford. He is a WEOC graduate, so that's the Welsh Institute of Chiropractic. And Michael's just one of these people that loves to almost work with a little bit of everything. He doesn't necessarily like a niche. He loves to work with all different types of conditions, and he would consider himself very much a wellness-based chiropractor. So rather than just looking at a pain condition, he's actually going to look at the long-term outcome of his patients. And so he's going to tell us a little bit more about himself, and it is Michael Lucas. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for that intro, Patrick. It's very kind of you. Where do I start? I guess one of the things I know we talked about was how I became a chiropractor in the first place. I think a lot of chiropractors have similar stories, and mine was actually from an injury. A 15-year-old that was on the way to a friend's house via my brother's driving, which wasn't great. He pulled out in front of a Volvo at a crossroads, which landed me in hospital with quite a nasty concussion, some head x-rays. Thankfully, no fractured skull, but the whiplash I suffered after that was special. It took a long time to recover from that one, and only through chiropractic that I was able to make that recovery, because I just wasn't getting anywhere with conventional treatment. The physiotherapy, the stretches, the exercises weren't working. Mm-hmm. The painkillers weren't helping. Mm-hmm. And it was through that experience with going to a chiropractor that I became one myself.
Amazing.
Family of health related occupations. So my stepdad was a psychotherapist, my mother a reflexologist, mm-hmm. My sister both nurses. So I guess it also felt like a natural path for me to go into the healing professions as well. So it was probably the best Volvo.
the worst and best Volvo accident you had in your life, right?
Very well built vehicles, I should probably add as well. So
I used to drive a Volvo. Those things are, honest to God, they're like tanks. They are literally are. They're built like tanks. They last like tanks, and if they hit you, it feels like a tank. They are like, honest to God, you never get pulled over in a Volvo because you just look like a granddad.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, man, they're comfortable cars and they drive great. And if you were in a Volvo, you probably wouldn't have the same problem.
Definitely not. No, I certainly will have mini metros, which is what my brother was driving at the time.
As in the old Austin mini metros.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So those Volvo versus Mini, we know exactly where that was going. Okay, tell us a little bit more about that experience. What did your chiropractor do to you in order to kind of to actually help you get through that kind of like those migraines and that concussion?
Well, the first thing was a lot of explanation about what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. So that was great, because I wasn't too sure what chiropractors did, and it was only through my mum's friend who'd been to a chiropractor that I'd even heard of maybe going to a chiropractor, because she'd recommended her chiropractor to me. So they explained chiropractic in detail. They explained what they were going to do, that it was going to be manipulation of the spine in order to improve the relationship between the bones and the way that the brain processes information. So he also taught me a lot about what chiropractic was in terms of what health was, what true health was as well. Mm-hmm. Before that, I'd always seen the symptom as the problem. Mm-hmm. And obviously I was taking painkillers, I was taking anti-inflammatories, I was treating the symptoms, but I wasn't getting any better. So he certainly taught me that healing comes from the inside out rather than from the external environment, which I think a lot of us tend to look to. As soon as you have an injury, you go and you seek a pill for that ill, don't you? That's generally what people believe. So when I went to the chiropractor, I was impressed with the assessment he gave me. He checked my feet, my ankles, my knees, my full spine. He checked everything. There wasn't a stone left unturned. Muscle power, reflexes, orthopedic tests. He did everything that you possibly could check on someone before going through everything that he found with me. And then just the experience of the adjustment itself was just mind-blowing in terms of the relief that I got, the instant relief I got from that explosion in my neck that had been there for a month. That tension that was there for a month and was giving me headaches and neck pain, and I couldn't turn my head. I could barely move the thing. So needless to say, it was quite an experience for a 15-year-old to suddenly get that relief. I had no difficulty choosing my occupation from there, really.
Amazing. That's such a nice story. And the thing is that, you know, when we look at why people get into this profession, there's such a spectrum within the profession. Like, there are people that obviously have MSK conditions, so musculoskeletal conditions. There are people that have neurological conditions, and you know, there are some people that have had systemic problems, and like, you know, chiropractic has really changed their lives. So it's really interesting to hear, because like your story is completely different to mine, and you know, we bring another 100 chiropractors on this, we're going to get some really completely different stories. So one thing that we know pretty much about most chiropractors, they're pretty anal about looking after themselves, and obviously, you know, you should be practicing what you preach. But I was just wondering whether you can tell us a couple of things that you do as a chiropractor to look after yourself.
Well, the first thing is getting adjusted.
Oh, who adjusts you, Michael?
Well, you did mention Patrick. You're my chiropractor. So we look after each other every week, don't we? So we walk the walk, we talk the talk when it comes to getting ourselves adjusted and in good motion and good alignment.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of kind of self-help, I think a lot of things I look doing is firstly eating well. So I try to eat real food. I remember I first heard the term jerf. I don't know if you've heard of jerf.
Jerf? No.
Sean Croxton. Jerf means just eat real food.
Just eat real food. I like that. Jerf.
So very simple concept, and I know there's a lot of diet, and there's how many diets are there? I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, of different diets out there. But the best, advice for most people in terms of what they can do is eating real. First and foremost is eat real food. So I try to eat organic, real food, and I try to eat more a paleo-based diet, but that really is just eating food that you'd naturally come across if you were roaming around the wilderness.
So for people that maybe don't know what paleo is, can you just explain that a little bit more?
Paleo refers to our kind of Stone Age, kind of Neolithic ancestors that lived a good 2-3 million years ago, that weren't eating bags of crisps, weren't eating bread and pasta as a staple part of their diet. They were eating
and bacon.
They're eating real food. They're eating food that have picked from the earth or chased with a spear. So paleo diet is foods that you would naturally find if you're roaming around. You could either hunt or gather. Far more of it would be, well, basically it's unprocessed foods. So that's
100%.
we try to eat as much as we possibly can. So it comes difficult. It comes in a little bit tricky when you're going to an event, a social event, a family meal. But for the most part, our diet is a paleo form of diet.
It's like that 80-20 rule. You'll see that pop up quite a lot.
The rule is the 80-20 seems to be a ratio that works for a lot of things. But certainly I don't beat myself up if I'm going to have a cream bun once in a blue moon. But as long as you're doing your best the majority of the time, I think that's what the important takeaway message is.
100%.
And just exercising. I like to do a lot of body weight exercises. I think obviously we are shifting our own body the majority of the time. So although I've dabbled with free weights in the past, I mainly do calisthenics now. So I mainly do body weight training or so a little bit of HIIT training. So I try and just focus on what I'm moving, which generally is my own body. So that's
and is there a reason why you choose that over maybe some of the older conventional types of training?
a good question. I choose, in terms of the HIIT training, I choose that because I am a busy guy. Family life, work life. I commute from Eastbourne to Ashford, which is 3 hours a day. So I don't have a lot of time to go for a 2-hour run. So HIIT training means that I can work out within 10 minutes but get the same benefit as a 40-minute run. So HIIT training is great. Anyone doesn't know what HIIT training is, it's that high intensity interval training where you go all out. So you're going to a higher intensity, but you're doing it for shorter periods of time. So I'll do like a 20-second sprint and I'll have a 10-second rest. I'll do that maybe 8 to 10 times.
It's interesting because that type of training has actually been related to the reversal of aging on cells.
Yeah.
I spoke to Dan Murphy, who's a chiropractor over in the States. He's a senior lecturer at Life University. I think it's Life West. I can't remember which, because there's multiple Lifes over in America. But he talks about high intensity interval training and actually the effect, because you get different types of oxidization. So when you're doing cardiovascular exercise, there's oxidization happening in your body, but there's oxidative stress and there's oxidative de-stress. And actually the amount of oxygen you're getting into your body is almost de-oxidizing. And actually that can have a really beneficial effect, not only on your fat loss and your health, but actually like the aging of your cells as well.
You burn about 30% more calories. You increase the metabolic rate for a sustained period far longer than you would from a conventional 40-minute run. So it stays elevated for a good 24 hours afterwards. So you're still kind of burning energy in terms of like calorie expenditure after you've finished.
Mm-mm. And HIIT training is not even like a new concept. There are tons of different types of HIIT, by the way. Like people don't necessarily always understand. It's like spinning is a type of HIIT training. Stuff like MetaFit, and I forget some of the other ones. There was like I think it was like the P60X program, which was like a plyometric. It was like 25-minute workouts a day, but you basically just do box jumps like over and over and over again.
The other thing, I mean, even just doing as many push-ups as you can in a 20-30 second period, or as many star jumps as you can, or swimming a length as quick as you can, or going up and down stairs as quickly as you can make it applicable to anything, any movement that you like. So on lockdown, that's a great thing to be able to do in your own living room or in your garden, or going up and down the stairs. So yeah, I try to employ a bit of HIIT because it's just quick. Efficient. The thing is, any endurance athlete that you know that's done it for a while, what are their knees like, for example, if they're a marathon runner? They're shot to ribbons because you just can't run and put that much stress on the body and not be affected by that.
It's like a car. Like a car's got so many miles before it's going to break down, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at it in both aspects. And the thing is that HIIT training can be just as dangerous for your health if you're doing it wrong.
Oh, but yeah, of course, yeah, certainly.
So you have to look at it on both. Like you could be a distance or like short distance sprinter. You've got to make sure that the function is there first, and then you can work on really hitting it hard as well. So I mean, I love HIIT training, but it's definitely worth working on your form first and then smashing it.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, of course, is that if you've got a weakness, and also you're going full, obviously with HIIT training, you are going to a high intensity. So if you've got a weakness, then you've got to make sure. That's why it's important to make sure you're using good form, and also that you're in good alignment and good functionality before you push yourself too hard.
Mm-hmm. And it's a graded thing as well. It's a graded thing.
Very, very keen with their exercises. They're not weak in terms of or unfit, but they're still injured. So that's where we want to look towards the underlying functionality of the body, rather than judge people just based on inactivity levels or activity levels. That's not enough.
Yeah, because you could look amazing and be an absolute mess on the inside. I mean, look at a great example of someone like that is Ronnie Coleman. Do you know Ronnie Coleman, Mr. Olympia? He was Mr. Olympia eight times. I can't remember whether it was 7 or 8. But he was the world bodybuilding champion like multiple times. But if you look at him now, he's absolutely shot to bits because he just abused his body. And despite the fact that he looked the part, his inside was just being shot like completely. And his chiropractors were telling him for years. Go figure. Amazing. So you've got some like really nice things that you do to take care of yourself. So we've touched on exercise, we've touched on nutrition as well. What advice could you potentially give to some of our listeners of like, you know, something that they could potentially do today or tomorrow that would actually help them to improve their health immediately?
I think before trying to employ any kind of lifestyle change, I think it's important to look at your beliefs, because a lot of people try and employ, for example, exercise, and they hate exercising. So to try and instill a behavior before you've instilled a belief is not always sustainable. It's a little bit like trying to move away from eating chocolate and watching Netflix on TV when you actually quite like watching Netflix and eating chocolate, or trying to get someone to exercise when they hate exercising and they hate salads when you're trying to get them to eat them. So I think the first thing is to look at why. So looking at having a strong why as to why you would exercise more or eat well, or you know, anything that is a lifestyle choice that might have been a struggle for you to achieve. That's probably one of the first things I'd say to look at.
It's really interesting because Anthony Robbins talks about this a lot. And pretty much all of his self-development books is that, you know, a lot of people go, okay, I want to do X. Mm-hmm. But like you say, they don't necessarily have a why, and they don't have any attachment as to like, you know, what's the problem if they fail. So say, for example, right, you know, if you wanted to give up chocolate, there's got to be I want to move towards this because I can see X, but I also want to move away from Y. So say, for example, the chocolate and Netflix example, I'm not doing enough activity and I'm eating loads of calories, I'm going to get fat. That's the one that I want to move away from. That makes me feel bad about myself. That's the pain. And so Tony Robbins says always, if you want to build yourself a why, what you've got to do is you've got to move away from pain. And then to put it on steroids, you've got to move towards pleasure. So not only can you go, okay, I'm going to get fat, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm going to avoid cancer, I'm going to avoid diabetes, I'm going to avoid heart disease, but also I'm going to look amazing in that bikini when I go out onto the beach in summer.
I'm trying to get the vision of you in a bikini out of my head now.
Yeah, well, man, do you know what? I think I'd rock a bikini, but maybe not a good look. Maybe I'll clear the beach.
Definitely, yeah. I think that the pleasure, the moving away from pain, moving towards pleasure is always important. I think, but even just arming ourselves with as much knowledge on the subject as you possibly can, because a lot of people we say eat better and exercise, but people don't know how to exercise well or what to eat. So I think arming yourself with knowledge is really important. I think having a strong why, and sometimes the why isn't even about you. I had a client of mine who was 35 stone and was struggling to find a reason to lose the weight. So we're looking at different reasons why, and we talked about kind of playing with the kids, you know, being able to enjoy what things they could enjoy and trying to visualize that and try to, so in the end, actually thinking about family is actually sometimes stronger than thinking about yourself, which is interesting, hey? Because you think that everything we do is about ourselves in terms of helping ourselves, our health, but actually sometimes when we're willing to change for other people more than we are for ourselves. I thought that was quite interesting.
There's a lot of people like that.
I think, yeah, sometimes, but it goes to show how that kind of tribal, doing things for other people, community, that's very strongly innate.
Mums are always like that. My experience with patients that are mums, like that, you know, their priority is never themselves. They'll always, their decision is based on, I can't afford it because I can't afford the kids. Or they'll make their decision, oh, I really need to do this because I need to do this for the kids. So like they're always they're never weighing it up on themselves. They're not going, okay, I need to do this to take care of myself. I need to do this so that I can work myself so that I can impact those people. So it's really interesting because that's a super common thing that a lot of practitioners will see in practice. It's not, and you know, it's okay to be like that. It's okay to be selfless and want to improve on yourself, not necessarily always for yourself, but other people around you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think certainly the other thing that I would advise is in terms of carbohydrates, and that's one of the biggest things I didn't realize before was that, I don't know about you, when you're at school or university, there'd be a lot about carbohydrate loading and how important it was to, when you're exercising, to really fuel your body. There's all these kind of Lucasades and sports gels, and I think still a massive misconception in terms of people believing that you should fuel your body principally on carbohydrates. And this is another reason why I like the paleo diet, is because it is naturally just a lower carbohydrate. I mean, you can still eat high carb diet on the paleo diet if you wanted to, but generally it is avoiding a lot of those high carbohydrate, high sugar foods, you know, are so unhelpful for our health when it comes to diabetes, obesity, heart, and so on.
Yeah, and like you just said, the big one when it comes to carbohydrates isn't necessarily those complex carbohydrates that you're getting in stuff like your sweet potatoes and stuff like that, but those refined ones. Like the really bad ones are, like you say, the Lucasades, the sugars and stuff that you're getting there. So again, like, super interesting because there's so much research going on about that stuff now.
And the whole fat as a fuel, because we hear such bad things about fat all the time, don't we? We're hearing that fat is causing heart disease and this, that, and the other, and I think that's not.
I think it's been pretty much debunked now.
Oh yeah, I think it has, but there's so many people still believe that fat is bad.
100%.
About that.
Yeah, it was actually, there was a study done, and this was, I think it was around the 60s, and it was the sugar corporations that basically turned around and produced the study to say that fat was bad. And that's when all like stuff like the margarines and stuff started coming out, and that's when we saw a massive rise in cholesterol and changes in people's hearts, in their heart health. So it just like it's crazy.
Out of something, you're generally left with more sugars. So that's, you know, even with milk, for example, that people would go to a semi-skimmed milk rather than a full fat milk, believing they're doing themselves a service. And actually, there's more lactose, because when you take the fat away off the top, then you're left with more lactose. So you've got more sugar in the milk. So it's actually worse.
And your body has no digestive enzymes to break lactose down, and again, so that becomes a huge issue as well. So you know, our body wasn't designed to ever do that. Say that one more time, just because I talked over you.
Just saying, when you've already got too much carbohydrate in the diet and you're putting a bit more in, and it's not helpful.
It was really interesting. I actually read the book, The Sweet Poison. And again, that's all pretty much about sugar. And actually the big one is fructose, and sugars from like fruit juice, because there's very high fructose. But actually, like, unlike carbohydrates, so glucose, we have a hormone, insulin, that helps us to detect when we've absorbed that. And the same, again, I think it's called CCK, is another hormone that we produce when we eat a lot of fat and protein. However, for fructose, there is none. So if you're drinking fruit juices thinking you're doing yourself a favor, you are lying to yourself, and that company is lying to you as well, because that fructose is going in. Your brain cannot detect the calories, and it's going straight around your midriff.
Yeah, it's good, and the liver's got to break that. It's got to process that in the liver. So you get fatty liver disease. It's one of the highest, after alcoholism. That's one of the highest causes of fatty liver disease.
And it pretty much presents exactly the same.
Yeah. Damage. The other interesting person that looked is Robert Lustig. I don't know if you've had a look. Robert Lustig is a neuroendocrinologist, but he's got some great documentaries and some great stuff on YouTube that he's done about sugar and its effects on the body. So it's definitely worth looking at. And I think a lot of the corporations, obviously Coca-Cola and so on, all the various That
and we know we need sugar in our body because our brain like works on sugar, but your body can actually metabolize sugar from fats and other carbohydrates and other sources, and even proteins as well. So, like this, there is this misbelief.
definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying some of the gems that are coming out of this. However, I am aware that if we carry on like this, we could be here all night. So I'm just going to give Michael an opportunity to just almost promote himself a little bit and just tell us a little bit about maybe you've heard some stuff that Michael has spoken about today that's particularly resonated with you. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about what Michael does or where he works. We don't know where necessarily all of our listeners are coming from. So maybe you wanted to reach out to Michael and ask him a few more questions. So maybe you want to give our listeners a few ways that maybe they contact you, maybe about your website or your Facebook channel, or maybe even your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So YouTube, I've got a channel which is AF Chiro. You can also find that by searching Ashford Family Chiropractic. And the website is at www.ashfordfamilychiropractic.co.uk. It's a bit of a long one, but check out the channel on YouTube. I'll try and post a lot more on there in terms of some of the things we talked about tonight in terms of diet and so on.
Amazing. And we'll add all of those. We'll add that website and his Facebook in the description for the podcast. So for people that are listening to it on Spotify or on YouTube, we'll put the descriptions to where Michael's website and stuff is in the descriptions below. Cool.
Thank you.
Any other bits that you want to tell anyone about?
I think in terms of one of the things I wish I could kind of have known a long time ago that I've always found since I considered it more was chunking things down.
Chunking things down.
Changed. Chunking things into smaller bits, whether that be reading a new book, whether that be exercising. Even just today, I was running in the rain. I was on a bit of a hill climb. And I was just thinking, just get to that next lamppost, just get to that next hedge, just get to that next. And I ended up doing about 5 miles in the end. But I wasn't focusing on 5 miles. I was focusing on
100 meters at a time.
And I think that's a great concept to employ when it comes to reading the next book, to exercising, to any big tasks that you've got. So that's probably my takeaway tip that I think I found very useful over the years. And hopefully will too.
Amazing. I realize I've missed a question with you, so I'm actually going to backtrack just 30 seconds. I'm gonna just ask Michael: was that your Terminator question, or was that your parting word of wisdom?
That's my parting line of wisdom.
Right, I'm going to ask Michael one last question because I've stiffed him here, and I know Michael prepared a little bit today, so I'm going to give him one. I'm going to give him a chance. So I like to ask the Terminator question, which is if you got the chance to go back to Michael 5 years ago and tell him one thing about future Michael that you might wanted to have learned back then, what might it have been?
Probably recently, it's and even just doing this call with you is to be okay with looking silly in public. Don't be afraid of being a fool in public. Be okay with failing. Okay to fail as long as you learn from the mistakes you've made. So I think that's probably one of the things that I think there's lots of opportunities that I know that I probably missed out on because I was afraid of failing at them. Mm-hmm. And I've embraced failing because I know that as long as I learn from each failure, that I can only get better with each one.
And that's actually, interestingly enough, like success is pretty much directly proportionate to the volume or that someone is willing, not necessarily going to be, but willing to make themselves look stupid in public.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily fail fast, because the thing is if you fail, you can learn and you can change. And this is the thing. It's like you're saying about that chunking. like giving yourself that opportunity to do little steps. And the thing is, you might not get it right the first time, and you might only manage 2 or 3 of your chunks. You might not get to your 5 miles, but because you chunked it, you've made it easier for yourself. And then you can maybe do 4 chunks next time, 5 chunks next time, but fail fast, learn, and progress. Amazing. Hey man, it's been so good to have you on the show. I will see you for my adjustment this week, next week, whenever we can get in to see each other soon. But it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show at some point in the future. Who knows? Maybe even Michael will start a podcast and he'll invite me over. Who knows? I'm setting him up. And so this is Patrick just finishing off our podcast, and we hope to hear from you guys again soon. And like I say, if you want to reach out to Michael, all of his details will be in the descriptions below. And again, we just want to say one more thank you, Michael, for coming on the show today. And that's all we've got time for today with Coffee with the Chiropractor.